Trump is a lying, hypocritical bigot. This is just one of the many comments on the American president at the Emmy stage. We get you the highlights ahead on the show. But first, to what happened in New York this evening, morning their time. U.S. President Donald Trump made his debut at the United Nations today. He was accompanied by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. The occasion was a forum to discuss reforms of the world body. Amid casual references to his business background, President Trump called on the United Nations to cut the bureaucracy, saying the world body is not living up to its potential. Listen in.
The United Nations has not reached its full potential because of bureaucracy and mismanagement. While the United Nations on a regular budget has increased by 140%, and its staff has more than doubled since 2000, we are not seeing the results in line with this investment. But I know that under the Secretary General, that's changing, and it's changing fast, and we've seen it. That's why we commend the Secretary General and his call for the United Nations to focus more on people and less on bureaucracy.
And bringing us all the very latest from New York is WION's own correspondent Patrice Howard, joining us from the United Nations headquarters. Good morning, Patrice. It's morning there in New York. Let me start with what happened, the trilateral meeting between the Indian Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj and her Japanese and American counterparts. Do we know what transpired?
Well, we have heard from India's foreign ministry. We have not heard from the U.S. Department, but we have learned that there was a constructive discussion, at least according to that feedback. We learned that that these three parties discussed a number of issues, including freedom of navigation was one topic that came up, likely in regard to China's movements in the South China Sea, and also the DPRK was top of the list, talking about North Korea, their recent actions, and India saying in their statement that essentially they want to get to the bottom of what's going on, what happened, and who's responsible. As we know, the U.S. has been putting pressure on India lately to scale back its relationship with that country, and that was likely the way the conversation went. We likely saw Rex Tillerson encouraging India to stay that course to reduce trade and ultimately not to support North Korea, given their recent tests.
Right. As you said, the U.S. has been urging India to scale down its engagement with North Korea, but India's business with Pyongyang is minuscule compared to some other countries. Does America have a plan in place to deal with the real problem, deal with the elephant in the room, that is China?
Right. Well, as we know, Donald Trump just recently tweeting, using that platform to say that the U.S. is considering cutting economic ties with any countries that do business with North Korea. That is an indication that Mr. Trump is going to talk about the business aspects of this. We've heard from Rex Tillerson himself, who has said that the U.S. doesn't have many options in terms of a military option in North Korea. So we will likely see the U.S. focusing on the business side of things, at least right now, and that's likely what happened in that meeting as well.
The Indian Foreign Minister has about 20 bilateral and trilateral meetings on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. We understand that North Korea and Iran are going to top the agenda. What else can be expected in the days ahead, Patrice?
Sure. Well, we can expect a number of topics to come up. We did get a release, and we learned that the foreign minister will be talking about climate change, also people-centric migration. We've heard India comment recently on the Myanmar situation. That is going to be a top topic of conversation at this UN General Assembly. Peacekeeping as well. We did see India attend the meeting early this morning in New York on reforming the United Nations and really trying to make it a more effective body here in the U.S. That is something that President Trump is pushing for as well. So we'll likely see that conversation continue through the week as well.
Patrice Howard, thanks very much for joining us from New York. As she said, terrorism and reform of the United Nations Security Council are the two key issues that will figure in External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj's address to the United Nations General Assembly on Saturday.
There was an attack of a terrorist attack in London, also in other parts of the world, in Iraq. So counterterrorism is a major plank of our focus this year at the UN. It is also a major plank of focus of other countries, including the United States.